Good afternoon, everyone. Quick question. How many of the audience here speaks French? I think it speaks or understands French, I would say. Most of people, I think, understand French. Okay, so we're going to have a hybrid, I would say, first session. Let me just introduce the topic right now. So I'm Fernando Rodriguez Mata, the director at the New European Reuse Alliance. We are the trade organization representing reuse and refill businesses across Europe. We've been obviously very much focused on this PPWR. I was here last year in May discussing what was going to happen, and here we are 1 year after. We have the PPWR almost there, really at the kilometer 41.900, I would say. And we have today a very nice panel here with me. We have with us Madame Catherine Chabot. She's a member of the European Parliament, a French MEP for the Renew group, so the Liberals in the European Parliament. Thank you, Catherine, for coming today. We have Tobias Wittgenstein. He's the the Public Affairs, Sustainability and Communication Director at GDB. That's the cooperative for mineral water bottles in Germany. That's the largest reuse system, maybe in the world, we can say in the world. Yeah, at least in Europe, exactly. 1 billion bottles reused every year and 100 million crates coming with it. At my left, I have Elisa Druta representing Reusable Packaging Europe. That's the organization representing pool operators for returnable transport packaging. And last but not least, Axel Daru, who is a circular economy activist. He's been working for different organizations, including Citeo and more recently, Mindero Foundation. Thank you, the four of us, for joining today. So without further ado, I'm going to give on the mic to Catherine Chabot, who will give us a first overview of how she saw from the inside one of these most lobbying dossiers of the mandate, we can say. So we are very much looking forward to hear you, Catherine. She will, I think, speak in French this time. So whoever does not understand French, you have at the left and at the right the QR code to use it, so you can follow it on your phone device, the translation immediately.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tous et merci vraiment pour votre invitation. Effectivement, je vais parler en français. J'ai hésité, mais je sors d'un mandat européen qui me laisse sur les genoux. Donc, je vais, comme c'est un peu technique notre sujet, je vais parler en français. Je répondrai peut-être aux questions en anglais après. C'est l'occasion de tester cette application qui traduit directement. J'ignorais que ça existait. Juste déjà pour commencer, avant de parler de PPWR, là, je voudrais dire qu'en termes de réemploi, je regarde ce que les gens portent autour d'eux, parce que moi je suis venue avec ma pochette que je réutilise régulièrement, de manière à ne pas utiliser celle du salon. Mais bon, ça c'est un sujet. Alors quant à ce texte, l'acronyme que nous avons baptisé PPWR, je vais pas revenir sur, je pense que tout le monde un peu est au courant de ce qui est sorti du trilogue et des négociations. Je voudrais juste vous donner un sentiment personnel, comment on l'a vécu au Parlement européen. D'abord de rappeler que c'était un texte majeur du Green Deal et malheureusement qui est arrivé finalement à la fin, véritablement, puisqu'on a commencé à travailler dessus il y a 1 an. Et on peut dire que au Parlement européen, pendant les 3 premières années, il y a eu une véritable émulation. On était tous dans une dynamique de construire ce pacte vert et qui était très positif, où vraiment on était ambitieux, etc. Et puis ça s'est effrité sur la fin du mandat. Et du coup, ça a rendu la négociation de ce texte compliquée. Et ça l'a rendu aussi compliqué dans les 3 institutions, c'est-à-dire il y avait déjà au sein de la Commission européenne des points de vue, à mon sens, voilà, pas complètement convergents entre la DG Envie et la DG Gros qui s'occupe plutôt des aspects économiques. au sein du Parlement européen, on va dire entre les différentes formations politiques, et puis au sein aussi du Conseil, puisque c'est un sujet qui fait intervenir tout un panel d'entreprises, et puis comme dans chaque État membre, on a des méthodes différentes, donc chacun a essayé de préserver un peu son modèle, et donc en fait, ça a été très compliqué à négocier, et puis on n'a jamais vu autant d'impact, d'intervention, vous l'avez dit, aussi des lobbies dans ce texte-là. En général, sur les lobbies, moi j'ai tendance à être au contraire favorable. Moi j'écoute les entreprises, je pense qu'on est là, nous députés européens, moi j'avais aucune expertise, donc j'étais en commission environnement où j'ai pas vraiment... J'ai suivi le dossier de loin, je dois le dire, puisque moi, je suis beaucoup plus engagée sur tous les enjeux maritimes au Parlement européen en tant qu'ancienne navigatrice. Et ce texte-là m'a intéressée beaucoup parce que ça fait des années que j'essaie d'œuvrer avec d'autres. Je vois Muriel Papin de No Plastic in My Sea. Ces déchets d'emballage, on les retrouve beaucoup à la mer. Donc, à ce titre-là, ça m'intéressait d'y contribuer. Et donc, je dois vous dire que j'ai rencontré donc pas mal d'entreprises, et de manière très anecdotique, par exemple celle des capsules de café. Je me suis rendu compte, en travaillant sur ce texte, que finalement, on était censé être sur la réduction, sur le réemploi et sur le recyclage, et qu'en fait, on n'a pas été... Je pense qu'in fine, le texte, on doit être content, on doit voilà, regardez comme le titre de votre conférence, c'est le verre à moitié plein, à moitié vide. Regardons le verre à moitié plein, ce que l'on a obtenu sur la fin des emballages non recyclables, à l'horizon 2030, ou sur tous ces emballages à usage unique. Mais il y a quand même deux piliers sur la réduction qui me semblent qui auraient pu être beaucoup plus ambitieuse, et je trouve que le recyclage est en train d'entraîner, et l'économie circulaire, à mon sens, a beaucoup bon dos, parce que à partir du moment où les entreprises, c'est le point de vue, ce que j'ai fini par comprendre, où les entreprises trouvent des solutions de recyclage, eh bien, elles ne changent pas de modèle, ou elles ne changent pas l'objet, et la capsule de café en est un exemple. Parce qu'on trouve des solutions compliquées, mais on trouve des solutions de recyclage, donc on ne change pas de modèle. Et je le dis, attention, parce que l'économie circulaire est absolument nécessaire à développer, mais elle ne doit pas, sous prétexte du recyclage, nous entraîner à éviter de réduire. Et quand je dis réduire, là où on aurait pu être aussi plus ambitieux sur la réduction des matériaux, du nombre de polymères. C'est une chose sur laquelle j'ai beaucoup amendé dans différents textes. J'ai même fait un rapport sur l'impact des déchets marins sur les pêcheries. Et je trouve que c'est un vrai sujet, on en parlera peut-être aussi après, un vrai sujet du traité sur le plastique. Nous devons réduire le nombre de polymères. Alors, dans les victoires que je peux saluer, moi, j'ai mon amendement Chabot qui est passé sur la fin des chips. J'ai demandé la fin des chips de polystyrène dans les emballages, vous savez, les cartons de livraison de tous nos objets transportés par, tous les achats en ligne. Ces chips de polystyrène, le polystyrène, c'est sans doute le matériau que j'ai le plus vu à la surface de l'océan. Il faut savoir qu'il n'y a que 1% des plastiques qui flottent, ou des déchets qui flottent en mer, mais le polystyrène est vraiment un fléau. Et j'ai réussi à faire passer cet amendement qui a tenu jusqu'à la fin, y compris après le trilogue. Voilà, et bien évidemment, Frédéric Ries qui a apporté qui s'est vraiment battu, la rapporteure belge de notre groupe Renew, s'est vraiment battue. Une de ses belles victoires, c'est la fin des PFAS, de ces polluants de longue durée, je ne sais plus le terme, éternel. Ça c'est un vrai gain, c'est une vraie victoire. Je pense que Frédéric s'est beaucoup battue pour ça, mais elle-même n'a jamais, elle me racontait encore l'autre jour qu'elle n'a jamais subi, elle vient de finir de boucler un 3e mandat, elle n'a jamais vraiment senti à ce point l'impact des lobbies. Pour conclure, il est normal que ce sujet soit clivant, parce que c'est l'un des sujets, c'est probablement le texte sur lequel nous avons travaillé, qui réunit toute la chaîne de valeur, des matériaux jusqu'aux consommateurs. Et c'est probablement l'un des textes qui nous engage à le plus de transformation dans la société quand on parle de changement de modèle. C'est pour ça que c'est compliqué. Mais c'est aussi un texte qui demande du courage. Donc il va falloir vraiment bosser pour sa mise en application. Je pense qu'on aurait pu être aussi plus ambitieux sur les échéances. Mais voilà, faisons déjà. L'histoire m'a appris à me contenter de ce qu'on arrivait à faire aboutir, même si je trouve qu'on ne va jamais assez vite.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Chabot. Très intéressant, very interesting. Thank you very much, Catherine. Moving on to Tobias, as an industry holder that has been on the market now in Germany for many decades, what are your takeaways and how you see now the PPWR? Do you see the glass half full? What are the critical and the positive aspects of this legislation?
Well, first of all, I can absolutely agree. This was so ambitious when we started 2019, 2020, that it's really a wonder that we have a text now which at least contains some good things for reuse. And the first good news is, if you reimagine the situation, we have a very mixed situation in Europe. We have on one hand side very major markets, or one major market which is Germany, with 42% reuse in beverages on the market. Or a system like ours, it's really 6 billion bottles filled per year in reuse. And this is only a small part of the market. And then we have many countries where we have only a very small part of reuse or no reuse at all. And the ambitious goal was to bring this in one regulation. And so we were really afraid, and that's one of the good news. By the way, I'm not taking a call. I have some notes here. So one of the good news was this PPWR fits both the existing systems and the new ones, because we were afraid of the existing systems that will be harmed by the regulation, because it contains a lot of details regarding the management of reuse. And I can tell you we're not very happy about it. Why? Because there's a huge variety of reuse systems and they work very differently. But the management tasks are only one size fits all. And this is very difficult. And if you think about it, of course it's important to think about hygiene if we talk about reuse, but that's not packaging, that's production. And so it's actually not to be addressed in PPWR. And who framed this discussion about the hygiene problems? It was not reuse. It was those who are against reuse who said, look, reuse is dangerous. No, it's not. We are doing this since decades in a very, very high-scale manner in Europe. In Germany, it's no problem. But this is what we had in the lobby process. A lot of people said reuse is dangerous. It's really not. But now we have all these management requirements we are not really happy with. Actually, I'm a big fan in this respect of the German law, which is very lean. Usually, German laws are very bureaucratic. In this respect, we only have a very clear definition of what's reuse, and reuse always contains the system. This is also what PPWR understood. We see the term reuse, and then we always talk about in a system for reuse. Without a system, there's no reuse. And this is good in PPWR. Now, let's talk about the goals. 40% in transport. Is this a lot? Or 100% in B2B within a company? this is definitely too much, and we saw it at the decision in the parliament. The commission said we will reconsider this. It makes sense. 40%, okay. What's the 10% in beverages? Actually, I can tell you, I would assume these 10% will not play any role. Why? If you're doing only 10% in reuse, it makes no sense in economic terms. Because the initial invest in reuse it's pretty high. We all know that. You have to invest in containers. You have to invest in logistics, like the reverse vending machines, like the logistics to our transport and so on. And there is no difference whether you do 10%, 20% or 50% share in the market. But 10% is actually a too small number to have an economic, sustainable reuse system. So my expectation is those countries, those markets that embrace reuse will end up in a higher reuse share on the market because it's economically sustainable. And those who are reluctant, they will continue complaining because they will never have the good numbers. And this is also part of the story. Reuse can be profitable and work on the same cost level as single use. That's also very important. So the 10%, forget about it. Let's look what the markets do. Okay, last, what can we learn from all this? Actually, if we think back, 2020-21, it was not a good situation. We had Corona, we were all staying at home, and I see this in all the scientific foundation of PPWR. It's not perfect, it's not good. The second thing is we saw a lot of lobbying, but we didn't see enough lobbying by reuse. Why? Because we don't have enough scientific foundation, and that's one of the lessons learned, at least for us. We have to work on that today, tomorrow, and the next years. We need more numbers. And of course, we see a lack of knowledge in the Commission. Actually, I'm still missing what I would call a reuse champion in the Commission. Actually, just one small story. I was on a PET conference in Brussels a few months ago. I met with one of the Commission guys, and he asked me, "What are you doing here? This is a PET conference, it's about single use." And I said, "You are wrong. This is a PET reusable bottles, and we need a lot of plastics in reusable packaging. It's not good or bad, it's the way how we use it." And this was the Commission guy who should know everything about it. He doesn't. So what we need in the future is definitely a reuse champion in the Commission, a reuse champion in the Parliament. We need more knowledge. And that's definitely needed in the next years. And last but not least, it's a very difficult question on how much can politics deliver on raising the market share in reuse. Because the reality is much more complex. So what I would like to see is not only the view on environmental questions, also on the economics, on the numbers. And this is something the European Union can do very well. It is a higher initial invest if you do reuse. This is something the union can deal on. They can work on it. And so we shouldn't think only environment, we should always think business. If we do reuse and think about the business case, and this is something politics can support. So is the glass half full or half empty? It's on us. It's on us doing reuse, and if I look around here, there are many, many, many companies, many startups, but also some major companies. We are more than 80 years old doing reuse. And it's on us whether the glass is half full or half empty, and it's on us to shape what the next steps are.
Thank you very much, Tobias. In any case, it must be a reusable glass. So moving on, because we are trying to catch up on the time. Elisa, please share with us some insights as well from the transport packaging industry. How do you see this PPWR in an industry as well, like in the case of Germany for the beverages, that you've been doing a lot of already reusable transport packaging? How do you see the targets and other measures?
Right, thank you, Fernando. I think a lot of my points have been echoed already by Tobias, but there's one component that I would like to mention. I think it's so crucial for us that we're having these discussions right here at this point in time, because we're having European elections in just a couple of weeks, and this is at a time where we need to highlight the pressing issues that the EU is facing, and one of them is the increasing amount of packaging and the increasing amount of waste that is happening and going on despite all the efforts, all the incredible efforts done by everybody on their side, by policymakers, by industry. We're still facing this problem, and the support of future policymakers is going to be crucial in this regard. So I think it's very, very important that we keep on continuing this discussion alive. At the same time, I think it's fair to say that the discussions on the problems are always very complex, and so are the discussions on the solutions. But the good part is that the solutions exist, and I think the reason why we're here is that reuse is part of the solution. And as an organization dedicated to representing reusable transfer packaging poolers, we're really committed, for example, to optimizing our operations, to ensuring that reusable packaging delivers the best sustainability credentials. And we also see that with the data. The data is quite clear right now that reusable transfer packaging is actually better than any of its alternatives. And that's not us saying this. This is coming from Fraunhofer. And for those who don't know, this is a very reputable German institute who's often looking into various policy options. So we know from Fraunhofer that reusable transfer packaging is better in nearly every category in which it can be assessed. So that's, I think, 15 out of 17. And just to list a few, we already know that RTP is better from a CO2 emission standpoint, from a waste generation standpoint, from a food safety standpoint, echoing Tobias' concern, and it also offers better product and food saving and protection. So in that regard, we do know what the solutions are and where they stand. And speaking of PPWR, we can see that the new regulation, which will hopefully be endorsed very soon, is a strong testament to that these things are finally becoming recognized, and we see that the ambition is there. That's a great step forward and clearly in the right direction. However, we feel that there could be more ambition, more targeted ambition. We feel that there is still a lot of work to be made further to make sure that the reusable systems do deliver their environmental benefits in the best way they can, and in every way that this is possible. And we feel that currently there are still some tangible steps to take further. Maybe one of the initiatives that we probably are missing at the EU level is, for example, an EU-wide reuse logo, because I think it's really important that we as consumers, policymakers, activists, citizens do distinguish very clearly reuse from single use. And I think this is a lot more from us to do in that regard, and it's very important that in the next mandate we do keep the reuse movement alive and growing.
Great. Thank you very much, Elisa, for this clear and very straight to the point intervention. Moving on now with Axel. The floor is yours. Axel has some slides to share with us, yeah?
Does it work, yeah?
Hope it works.
Surprise, surprise. Okay, cool. Hello everyone, thanks for the invitation, thanks a lot. And sorry, I'm not the fresh fish in the room right now. It's been my bachelor party this weekend, so I will try to recover a bit, and I will try to be straight to the point as well. Mrs. Chabot explained that we had a lot of lobbying during the final process of the PPWR. I want for the French speakers to make a small advertisement as well. We've published with Jordan within the room as well a website which is jevottelobby.fr, and which make the link specifically with the far right and the industry lobbying, and two files are specifically linked to the PPWR. To go back to the PPWR, I will mainly focus on the next step, what we could do in terms of recommendations, in terms of improvement on the field. And remember as well, linked to my previous statements, that you have as well a power to make some change because you have the right to vote, and you need to vote whatever you want, vote the 9th of June for the European elections. So we've got the travel itinerary, and that's good, but we need to push further. And why we need to push further is because from the economic point of view, the cost of single use is not very clear. Why? Because of the own resources or non-recycled plastic packaging of the multi-financial framework, because as well of the implementation of EPR and the cost coverage of EPR, which is quite different from a member state to another one, and as well because of the cost coverage in terms of littering and end of life of the waste as well. From a political and legal point of view, we have as well a key role to play for the implementation phase of PPWR at the national level, but as well in terms of secondary legislations. And this is definitely where we all need you guys to push further on that points. Few recommendations from an external point of view. The reductions targets. Why? Because we already have the single-use plastic directive with reductions targets, and we could go further as well. The DRS approach, and I see Alexi here, I know that you've got a masterclass as well on mixed DRS approach, which could make sense as well in some specific member states. Further economic incentives, reshape EPR policies, and we've published as well with some NGOs a few months ago, last October, a white paper about reshaping EPR, not only about packaging, of course, about the overall policy tool, the polluter pay principle, and to go further by having like a really ambitious EPR system. And for change. About the first one, so yeah, we've got already the single-use directive with specific reductions targets that we could go further as well. We've got the PPWR, and we've got as well, such as the French law here with the circular economy law, reduction targets, for example, on single-use beverage bottles. We could get this type of targets as well in some specific member states. Mixed DRS approach by having the same system, not the same system, but the same collection points, at least for the consumers, for single use and reuse, to be able as well to achieve the reusable packaging targets. Further economic incentive by getting like a pro signal, because it's not really aligned right now, to really switch and to enable to give to the consumers the key tool to achieve these transitions. By getting as well targeted product taxations, we could do so with the revision of the Waste Framework Directive. More and more, the narrative within the EU is to get a resource framework directive rather than a waste framework directive. And by getting like a more systemic approach of the value chain, as Mrs. Chabot explained, for the polymers, for example, and to be able to give a price signals at the materials level rather than the end of life. Fee modulation as well. Some specific member states are already working on the fee modulation on reuse. It could play a role as well for the brand owners to switch. In terms of economic incentive, you already have few examples. For example, in Netherlands, with a specific tax on single-use items, and as well at the city level in Germany. I'm sure you all know these examples. We could go further at the local levels with this type of incentive as well. Reshape EPR. As I said, we've made a paper a few months ago with some NGOs to reshape EPR to go more on the reductions, prevention, reuse as well. And by getting really like the full implementations of the polluter pay principle, we could get as well the overall costs of the single-use system to be able to get these transitions to reuse, while as well have this accommodation for reuse and this fund for change. The last version of the PPWRs give the possibility to get the fund for change. It's already the case in France with the 5%. It's the case as well now in Belgium, but we could get such fund for change for other member states to accelerate this transition as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Axel. Brilliant. Let's move on now, a round of questions addressed now to the different speakers, and the last minutes I'll also give the floor to the audience in case you want to ask some questions. So, Catherine, indeed you mentioned the first star in the waste hierarchy, reduce. There are, as Axel said, some reduction targets. We can say this is not enough, at least there it is. However, as it's been said, we need now to ensure the implementation and the enforceability of this. I know that you have been working in the European Parliament now, but how can we ensure that at the different levels, so the European level, the national level, the regional level, and even now that we are talking about a global plastic treaty at international level, and what will be the effect of this treaty in terms of reducing plastic pollution and also maybe production, how we can ensure that all these legislations are aligned and converge in a way that it makes sense to go towards the same direction. So what is needed from the different actors, be it the industry holders, be it the consumers, but also the kind of the let's say the civil servants that need to understand this law and put it in practice. How can we ensure that the goodwill and the spirit of the law turns into practice?
Yeah, it's a big question, but I think if we want to really implement these legislations with an S, I think we need to put the consumers on board, because I didn't speak about the representatives of. We didn't meet any representative from the consumers, and I think we all have our own duty. And I think when we work on a legislation at the EU level, we need to think about that EU. Everybody, all the world, is looking EU, and especially during this time of these negotiations on the plastic treaty, we need to show to all the world that EU is pushing is trying not only to pushing, but is testing solutions. No, but we did not speak about innovations, but we need to understand that to change our the goods we are and the packaging we are using today, and all of you probably you are working on innovation solutions. We need to test, and I think to answer your question, so we have to understand that EU should be the laboratory of the world on the switch to another relationship with plastic. I think you should have a look of this very interesting documentary, Share Plastic, because it's very interesting. Plastic is useful for life, for our member states, for people, but we just need to put more good sense in using it. For example, one of the main issues for me in this PPWR is the end of those little single-use plastic packaging for salt, for sugar. It's completely crazy, those solutions. So, but it's not only the question for the industries, but if you don't bring the consumers on board, we won't achieve the goals. That's why
Totally, no. Absolutely agree with that. There was previously today a conference on consumer behavior. Building on that, there's been a lot of discussion, Tobias, about the material war, carbon exemption for certain segments. Can you build up a bit on the case of plastics and reuse? Why indeed we can create a good narrative on plastics, because there's a lot of now, let's say, or there was previously a lot of anti-plastic movement. We have this global plastic treaty trying to cut off the pollution. So part of that lobby was also targeting plastic, saying that there could be an explosion of plastic out there. But yeah, maybe you can elaborate if you want a bit on that, and say that actually potentially, and that's what even some associations that are representing plastic manufacturers, like Plastics Europe, put there, reusing plastics will help reduce the production of plastics as well. So we can say that plastics have a good play to role here, a nice role to play, for this reuse sector, right?
Absolutely. And I think this is, by the way, a very interesting thing we saw in the last year. And even if we might be unhappy about the numbers of the reuse quotas, I can tell you what changed is definitely there's in the big associations, they all have now reuse working groups. I'm co-chair in PETCO on reuse. We just founded in the German Plastic Association, there is a reuse working group since 3 weeks, and they were fighting reuse for many, many years. So there a lot of change happened. And it is absolutely important. So I started my career in Southeast Asia more than 30 years ago, where we already had the plastic issue in the seas. And this is actually part of the bad story. And yes, I like this idea of Europe being the laboratory, how to fix it, but we have to be fast. And I also absolutely agree what you just mentioned about simplicity for consumers. If we don't manage our reuse system to be simple, easy to accessible, easy return, we will fail. And Axel, what you just said is part of the important next step. If DRS happens, it has to be open for reuse, and this is actually one of the weak points. It's very tiny in the PPWR. It would have been better if there would be a clear remark on if it's DRS, it has to be open for reuse. We are talking about the infrastructure. We are not talking about the system operator. The infrastructure, if you go to Germany, if you go to the Netherlands, you can see it happen. There are reverse vending machines, and they can take both single use as well as reuse. And if there is any DRS being introduced in Europe in the next years without being open for reuse, it's wrong. And we have to also think about more than just bottles. It's very easy to have other foodstuff, of course, oils, but also coffee cups. It's the same thing. You can return it in a reverse vending machine. They can do it. I think most of the machines you see around here can do it. It's about bowls. So let's open up us up also for those things that are not mentioned in PPWR. There's a lot of more potential for reuse, and the infrastructure is there. Or it should be there in the next year. So that's a very important part of it. Last sentence, if it comes to plastic, it's definitely part of the solution. But always think about it. If you do it in reuse, it's a double circle. A bottle like this one, it goes up to 25 times it's refilled. And the last time, it will be fully recycled because it's returned as a reusable bottle. And that's why it's so important to think about systems here. And we shouldn't be afraid of plastics. We just should avoid using it the wrong way.
Thank you very much, Tobias. So I know we are about ending up because it's almost, I'm going to ask just 2 more minutes for the last remarks from Elisa and Axel. Indeed, Tobias mentioned before these 40% targets for cardboard exemption. For transport packaging, we have the cardboard exemption. Now we have this commission assessing what is feasible out there for national transactions and within the same company. What's your take? Because today, transport packaging, we can say, is the more scale solution in Europe. So what's the future looking like for the industry after the PPWR is adopted?
Right. Thank you for the question. I think it's a very, very relevant question about reuse targets when it comes to transfer packaging. And before I go on and answer it, maybe I can clarify that currently the main competitor of reusable transfer packaging, or particularly reusable plastic rates, is the single-use cardboard boxes. So this is just the status quo. This is how it is. And when we see the reuse targets, which are currently set, I think, at 40% by 2040, we see that they have this critical exemption in them that says that cardboard is exempted from these targets. So just to clarify what the actual tangible implications of that would be, we can take a look at Germany, for example. There's a German NGO looking into this who has found that actually this critical exemption means that the reuse targets would not apply to 70% of the market in Germany, because 70% of the transfer packaging market is cardboard. So that means that 40% target is actually applying to just 30%. It's complex arithmetics, I know, but it means that reuse targets are just applying to a small portion of the market, meaning that their impact is actually not as significant because the majority of part of this market is already reusable. So when we say that the ambition could be a bit more tangible, could be a bit more stronger, this is exactly what we mean. Currently, the reuse systems for transfer packaging are very advanced, they're very scaled, they make sense from a business standpoint. So there is almost no excuse not to have goods move in the EU in packaging that is not reusable. Yet we are finding these challenges of moving that ambition further, which is definitely our homework for the next years.
Thank you very much. And we're going to end with Axel, maybe you were on a bachelor party. I'm going to make you the last joke of your long weekend. Okay, I'm keeping this as a souvenir. When this thing will become some iconic product that I can maybe resell online for 1,000 million euros, because it will not ever be in the market, and people will like to have it as an iconic product back from the beginning of the end 20th century, beginning of the 21st century. Give us your last insight on when this will become something of the past, if ever.
I would say let's make the single-use packaging vintage by 15 years.
All right, let's do that then. So thank you very much, everyone. Sorry that